Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Major Ash Crosby. We warmly welcome the family of Sister Clarice Isobel Halligan, whose story will be told shortly. We warmly welcome the representatives from the following organisations who are attending this evening's ceremony: Defence Force Nursing, the Australian College of Nursing, and the Australian Nurses Memorial Centre, St Kilda Road, Melbourne. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Please be seated if you can do so. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the hearts of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 Australians, men and women, who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Sister Clarice Isobel Halligan. Clarice Halligan, known as Claire, was born on the 17th of September 1904 in Ballarat, Victoria, one of 8 children born to Joseph and Emily Halligan. Claire grew up in the Melbourne suburb of Kew, and after her schooling trained as a nurse. She was living with her parents at the family home when she enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 11th of July 1940. She was taken on strength with the Australian Army Nursing Service and attached to the 7th Australian General Hospital. She spent some time in camps in Melbourne before embarking for Singapore in July 1941. There she was attached to the 10th Australian General Hospital and was serving in Malaya in 1941 when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Once the fall of Singapore became inevitable, most Australian personnel were evacuated from the island. Halligan was serving with the 13th Australian General Hospital and was one of 65 Australian nurses who left Singapore aboard the Vina Brook on the 14th of February. 2 days later, the ship was bombed by the Japanese and many lives were lost. Sister Halligan sustained deep shrapnel wounds from the blast and was treated by her fellow nurses before being helped into a raft. Others joined the lifeboats, and those who could made their swim for the nearby Banker Island. Halligan's raft reached the beach and she was tended to. Some of the survivors travelled to the nearest port to formally surrender to the Japanese, but 22 Australian nurses remained on the beach to tend the wounded. On the morning of the 16th of February, a group of Japanese soldiers arrived and ordered the wounded around a headland where they were killed. The rest of the survivors were ordered to walk into the water. When the water reached their waists, the Japanese opened fire with machine guns. Of the 22 Australian nurses ordered into the sea, all but one were killed, including Claire Halligan. She was 37 years old. Sister Clarice Isobel Halligan is commemorated on the Singapore Memorial, and her name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst almost 40,000 other Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. Her photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Sister Clarice Isobel Halligan, who gave her life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain had thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and we wish you all a very good evening.